once we have it recorded, and we might do it a couple of times recording, and then till we get to where we want it,
Like
and then
the
we can do
content
it
of what
live.
you.
Yeah, and
Oh,
then
I see what
once
you're
we can
saying.
do it live, then we can just post the recordings
Okay, so for the
beforehand.
first few times, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah, I approve. Really. So right now, are you recording?
Yeah. Right now we're
And for the first few weeks, then
for first few weeks
at least. Okay,
until
that sounds good. Until we get it like running a little more smoothly on the same page. And
yeah, and I also want to test the audio levels of the recording and like that to make sure that they are good and everything.
okay, that sounds good.
Okay, so this is our first podcast of ITE Mavens and our Tech Talks. And I am Victor of ITE Mavens, and this is my girlfriend Julie. And she is the tech phobe that is going to be asking questions that people that may not have the greatest intuition for technology.
I'm not sure that I'd call myself a technophobe. I maybe am a little more resistant than your average person. I think that technology just tends to break in my hands. I'm not sure how, but I definitely appreciate when you slow down and take the time to explain things to me. I think it would be really helpful for a lot of people out there like me. So the other day, this question came up. Dark mode. I heard, I think it was from you, probably, that there was an update that allowed us to use dark mode on my cell phone, and it didn't just start happening as I would hope. I do think that the updates are coming automatically, so I don't even remember. You just helped me do it. Can you explain, does the dark mode come to all phones? How do you get it? How does this feature enable?
Yeah, so dark mode is essentially it's an aesthetic that especially if you're in the dark, helps with your eyesight, like your eyes to see the screen better, versus the traditional white background and black text that shows up oftentimes black background with white text. And there's a few variations of dark mode, but we won't get into that. When it comes to dark mode, though, phones are now rolling out a lot of apps, and phones are rolling out with the dark mode, where you can, like YouTube, turn it so that it's a black screen. Very helpful, especially if you're in the dark. Some people just like the aesthetic, so I have it on during the day and during the night, and it's used to help out with the eyesight.
Does it reduce the battery use at all?
Yeah, especially if you have a phone that has an OLED.
Which is the display, the
Yeah.
kind of lighting.
Yeah, the display with an OLED, especially if it uses black pixels, it can actually just turn those pixels off altogether, meaning that it saves battery consumption. And just in general, having a darker color tends to save battery life, because it's the display brightness actually is the biggest killer to battery life.
Which phones? Okay, so that what was that OLED?
OLED
Which
versus
is okay.
it's the newer version. I can't remember what the O stands for, but essentially phones started with LCD, and then they came out with the new technology LED, and then now the OLED is a more flexible version, and it's usable in a with a higher quality screen and things. Organic light
emitting diode.
Anyways, back to your first question. Do all phones have dark mode rolling out to them? most newer phones, especially if they came out in the last couple of years, will be rolling out with the new dark mode features for apps for the phone itself, the device itself.
Like the Pixel has it for the Google News feed, right?
Yeah, so the what is
I
it?
just
Google
got
News
that.
feed,
You helped me with.
the Google YouTube app. A lot of the Google apps are having Google Messages now has it, and then the Google Pixel itself has a dark mode kind of innately built in. If you have a dark background or a black background for your home screen, the UI actually turns into a dark mode in itself, which is
The user interface. So like
yeah,
what you see, the main screen.
yeah, the main screen. So like when you go into your settings and things like that, or the top down when you use that notification bar
The background
settings,
is
yeah,
black.
the background's black. Or when
Okay.
you go into the Google feed, the background will be black if you have a black background.
Okay. And so we were also the other day we talked a little bit about other visual adjustments that we can make to our phones to help make it a little easier on our eyes. You showed me that night mode. If you just pull from the top on at least the
Yeah.
Pixel, you can click one of the little pictures that turns on night mode, and that takes the blue light out, right?
Yeah, it gives it like a yellowish tint because
Like a
it's
rosish tint.
taking out the blue light, which is studies shown that the blue light emitted makes it so that people have a hard time sleeping or getting to sleep because it's stimulating the brain to be awake, thinking it's daytime, just like almost simulating a night or the day sky to their own mind. So using the night mode will make it easier on the eyes, especially in the dark, and help if you are having trouble sleeping because of excessive tech use. It would help transition away from that.
Okay. And I since I switched my phone all the time to that night mode, but I do think it has reduced how I get headaches from staring at my phone screen, and I haven't used those yellow tinted glasses we got a lot, but when I have on occasions when I was really getting headaches, if I put those on, it did help reduce that strain.
Yeah, people that are sensitive to light, especially like fluorescent lights or LED lights, it's very useful to turn it on so that it helps alleviate headaches and things.
What about the tinted privacy screens? Do those help protect your eyes at all, or are those just to aren't directly in front of the device?
I'm sure you can get them that are polarized for the screen protection, but most of the time they're just set to um, so that at an angle you can't see it. It's more of a ridging kind of effect to make it so that you can't
Yeah, like
see at an angle.
when red lights have the little slats coming straight out, yeah, just to block the view. Versus that was another question I was thinking of the other day. So is
Oh,
that along the types of screens, like the OLED?
mm-hmm. So e-reader screens are not LED screens. They are in a different um, category altogether. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong on this, but it's essentially like uh, you know the how the Etch-a-Sketch works with the magnetism, bringing like the magnetic shards up.
Okay.
Essentially, it's just take that and like add technology to it, like super tech, and it like um
So it's really more
yeah, like if
physical
you're reading,
pieces.
yeah, if you're reading that in a dark room, you won't be able to see it without a light.
No light at all. Okay.
However, there is also the Kindle Paperwhite with the backlight, which now does allow for you to be able to read it at night because it does have a backlight in there.
Okay. All right. And then we Yeah, I know the other day you showed me there are a lot of accessibility features on.
Yeah, a lot of phones nowadays they're built in with a lot of accessibility features such as text to speech, and which will read out text that's showing up on the phone and allow you to navigate through the phone without even being able to see.
Switch activated. I even saw on Pixel when I was playing in the accessibility features, besides like changing the size of the font
Mm-hmm.
and being able to invert the colors. Was that, did you say that was for if you're colorblind?
Yeah, there's colorblind options. Inverting colors also is a kind of a cheap version of dark mode. It doesn't work exactly well because it inverts all the colors. And it's not like sensitive to if it's a picture or something like
Mm.
that. Um, but it also, yeah, for colorblind, there's been options to help. It's an option to help out with you are having trouble distinguishing between different colors on the phone itself. And the fun fact is, I just read an article. Uh, Websites, can't remember if it was Applebee's or something like that. Websites are getting sued for not being navigatable.
Accessible.
Yeah, like the navigation features, like text to speech features, were not able to read their website, so it was not accessible to like blind people.
Oh, that's interesting. But now it's becoming, I mean, at least Google has free services that people their
Yeah,
products and their apps.
yeah.
That's
Google has
okay.
services, but if the website itself can't be read by those services,
Yeah, then
then
that's a problem. That
yeah.
little incompatibility there.
Hmm.
Uh, so when that happens, is it the type of coding? Why would a website have
So
that?
oftentimes, uh, websites, especially nowadays, how advanced they are, it might not even technically contain the text that the speech is looking for. It might be all images,
Okay.
and this like and a simple creating a website that's just mainly images that might have text in the images, but as far as the text to speech thing can read, it just only reads the that it's a picture. It doesn't read what's on the picture itself.
Mm.
And and even then, a technology to read what's on pictures is very limited. We have Google Lens right now that's trying to
Mm-hmm.
build upon that, but it's still like that's a ways off. So unless the text is actually in the website itself, it won't be able to read it. And but a lot of websites now they're trying to be all fancy with like the slideshow and things like that, all the CSS coding that's in there to make it super fancy, and it looks good, but it's actually nothing that is able to be read by the spiders and things that.
I find that some of those sites get a bit too busy. They're just you don't know where to look. They're just a jumble, and the slideshows, like you're talking, where it's just
Yeah.
cycling through pictures without having to click on anything, or maybe it has the GIF, whatever, the moving pictures
Hmm.
animation, and it's a little excessive in my times. I do like when they use words and pictures. This is going down a whole other road though. Just the picture icons, you know how that throws me off sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of people that don't understand the picture icons that a lot of technology is based upon now.
Well, it's interesting too because it seems like Apple was more into pictures at first, and Windows and Microsoft tended to have more like words, lists, and sometimes they would pair an icon with the words. And then Apple, when I was a kid, we had Apple computers at school, and so Apple really grew to be this big name. And of course, they're really popular, probably the number one brand name nowadays. I don't know, the pictures that they seem to emphasize though. I do like certain things that Google has made that are focus more on lists. And that actually kind of leads into differences between those major ones.
Those major ones such as Apple and Google.
It's just
and
like a general
Microsoft.
wide open question. Yeah. So are those the three main ones? Microsoft, Google,
and
Apple?
And Apple. Yeah, those are for the main like consumer choices of technology. Those are like the main systems. You have Google with its Chromebooks that are overtaking right now in the school sectors, especially.
And the internet browser they use is Chrome.
Yeah, and the Chrome, which is also a Google browser. And then on the
Google browser. No, I thought you were saying that instead of internet browser, I thought you were calling them the Google browsers.
No, yeah, it's a browser. Chrome is a browser made by Google.
Yeah, okay.
And then they also, and on the mobile front, they have the Android operating system, and their flagship version of the Android operating system being the Pixels. Then you have Microsoft.
Wait, the operating systems?
What was that?
Say that again. So wait, the flagship operating system?
No, the operating system is Android for mobile.
Okay.
Which is a Google-made operating system.
But aren't there names like about fruits or cookies and things like
That's
Oreo?
the version.
Okay.
So right now we're on Oreo.
Of Android operating system.
Yeah, which is
that ever shortened to like AOS? Because like Apple has iOS, everything.
Android O would be
Android O. So
yeah.
Short for Android operating
they just
system.
It just goes in alphabetical order. So the first Android operating system was Android A, and now we're all the way down to Android O.
Oh, so wait, iOS, is that the first, or is that every iteration since?
iOS is just the Apple version of the mobile operating system for the phone. So their phones use iOS, and right now I think they're on like iOS 13.
Okay, so they number them instead of alphabetizing.
Exactly. Google alphabetizes them. They are Alphabet Inc. after all.
What?
Google's
Their Alphabet what?
Google's company is called Alphabet Inc.
Oh, I was just thinking, what about when they get to 26? Or I mean to Z, then do they start with AA or?
I don't know. We haven't gotten there yet.
All right.
Because we're all still trying to figure out what. Oh no, we're on Android P right now. Android Pie.
Oh, so Oreo was they name it something cutesy that starts with that letter.
It's always like a dessert. So Android P.
That's cute. What a lovely tradition they started.
I don't know what, so everybody's right now just guessing what Android Q is going to be.
Q, oh.
Going to be called. It's got to be a dessert.
A dessert.
Yeah. So.
There's got to be something.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And.
What's the operating system for that last one?
So that was.
You talked about Apple and Android.
Apple and Android. We talked about Android, their computers and their phones. Apple's computers are the MacBooks and the iMacs and iPad Pro, if you want to consider it. And they all are running on the Mac OS.
Okay, so Mac operating system is separate from their mobile.
Yes, iOS versus Mac OS are very different operating systems.
But Apple devices, those hardware pieces, only run their operating systems, right? And that you've called it a closed ecosystem in that they don't talk well with Android, but that all the Apples talk really well, even if it's Mac versus mobile?
So anybody that has a Mac ecosystem knows it's almost impossible to get them out of it, right? Because it's so convenient between their files being shared. They have the AirDrop, which is super simple if they want to like trade files between their phone and their computer, they wirelessly can do it just through AirDrop, which is a super simple system, super efficient system. Sorry. Then they also have the iMessage. People will stay on Apple specifically for iMessage because they can, start a conversation and text over their phone and then switch it over to their computer. Same thing with their video chat version. And now Google actually does have that same thing with Android messages.
I was gonna say, aren't they moving away from some of their secondary apps? It's got cumbersome, and now they're kind of shaving those off and integrating the features a bit more like Apple, it seems.
Google had specifically 3 main apps, and if you want to call Google Voice a fourth one, but they had Allo, Hangouts, and Messages. Hangouts is now being rebranded as a business-only chat. Allo seems to be, I think they said that they're going to get rid of it here soon. And Messages is going to be their primary texting app. But Messages, they also have Messages for web, where you can connect your phone to your computer and continue text through your computer. So iMessage, it's still not quite iMessage as seamless as iMessage is, but it is something that they are working on achieving. But then that's just another part of Android or the Mac and Apple ecosystem that makes it easy to be seamless between mobile and your computer. And not to mention, all the computers generally are powerful enough to do whatever you want. Historically have had less virus problems. A lot of, like, I know you don't like the way that it's very picture focused, but a lot of people have found it a lot more intuitive and easier to understand. Right. Software tends to run better. The operating system used to be more efficient. Now it's about the same as a Windows operating system. As it's gotten more complex, the operating system has gotten heavier, and Windows 10 recently has brought down all the like the operating system and kind of shaved it off to make it more efficient. And Google's Chrome OS is pretty much right now one of the most efficient operating system. I'll be one of the what is it? It doesn't have as much going on with it, right? Because it's mostly just a web browser, and they're currently adding more to it. So Mac, you'll see, is very popular in software tech. So places that are building or that are coding or design studios and things like that. And then also, if in retail, it tends to be, from what I've seen, I haven't done a study on this, but from just my personal, what I've seen, unless somebody's using some sort of proprietary software, Apple is used as in retail stores as their primary retail point of sales system.
I have seen the tablets a lot. I think Old Navy, a lot of places that use Square tends to partner up with them, and so a lot of modern businesses that use Square.
Yeah, because Square has a Apple device holder, and now Square does have its own proprietary one too. And I don't know if they have. I think they might have one for Samsung too, but it's not as common. Sorry. Oh, sorry. I was going to finish the third. Oh, sure. The third with Microsoft. Microsoft is the third big entity. However, they're right now the biggest shareholder in the Windows market. The majority of businesses use Windows for a lot of their back-end operations, servers and office work and things like that tend to run on Windows. Most like the right now Microsoft Office is one of the biggest, or is, I'm pretty sure, the biggest like Office, like Excel, Word, PowerPoint, out there, and sharing the files between them. And so a lot of times, even those places that have Mac in the foreground still might be running Windows in the background for the rest of their operations.
Okay, that makes sense because Microsoft Word is used on Apple, isn't it?
Microsoft Word, yeah, is used on Apple. I'm sure Apple has its own version. And then you also have Google Docs that's available,
Yeah,
but
Google
Microsoft
Docs
Word
is.
tends to still, the Microsoft Office package tends to still win over.
So if you download a Google Docs app on a Chromebook, because some Chromebooks you can download apps, but some you can't. Is that right?
Yeah, so some Chromebooks, most of the newer Chromebooks, you'll be able to use the App Store.
So you could download and use offline.
Yeah, and you can, so if you can use the App Store, Microsoft Office actually does have an app that you can use on Chrome.
So you could even use Office.
Yeah, so you could even use Office.
Okay, because I've used Google Docs a lot lately, and I don't know how that works with uploading after if you work on them offline. But when you have online, Google Chrome has seemed very
So the Chrome Office is able to run offline if you have the app downloaded separate, and then it'll sync up the files when you're back online again. But you would need to download the files prior to having them, which you can easily do when you're in the online version. You can select to have your files downloaded or offline moded, so that they will have them downloaded to all your devices. You can edit them, and then they'll sync up with each other when they're back online. Back to Microsoft, though, being the third of the right now, it's the biggest share of the Microsoft, or Windows 10 has the biggest market hold, and that is partly because back-end structure that generally uses Microsoft Office. There's a lot of proprietary software that uses Microsoft Office, and by that I mean like the hotel industry. They have like their check-in system. Almost every single hotel has, unless it's like a small independent hotel, a lot of the corporate hotels have a software that has been built for their hotel, or built for that kind of large chain hotels. Maybe not specifically for them, but like as a chain, that they have proprietary software that they get, and that is like, and in order to run a hotel of that size, this is what they get. Not only that, it could be forced upon them on franchise. Regardless, that's separate from the point. The point is like they have a proprietary software that's given to them, and that only runs on Windows. Sometimes it might not even run on Windows 10. A lot of companies are on Windows 7 still because the software that they use only works on Windows 7 or even Windows XP even. So, and there's no other version that they can switch to because it's only one company that's made it. They only have it for this business that they're in, and it's only been used on Windows, and so everybody just is accustomed to there.
interesting.
So the Microsoft mobile market, though, has died off. Microsoft had Nokia as their phones for a while, and they had Windows phones. They did not sell, and so now they gave up on that.
So most phones are made by third parties, not those main big brands. Like Google has the Pixel line now, and Apple, of course, has the iPhone line.
Yeah.
But most other phones are made by third-party brands. I was going to ask back to that, the OLED versus, I guess, what I have is a Pixel. So what is this one? Do you know?
The Pixel? The Pixel, I believe, is the OLED.
And that is such that those pixels just aren't even, so like your phone right now, the screen is black, but it's got like the time, the date, the weather, yeah, it's got a few notifications and the battery percent, and those are the only pixels.
Those are the only ones that are turned on right now.
The rest, because it's OLED, those can just rest.
Yeah, those can be off. But with LCD phones, when it has a system like that, it's either the whole screen is on or the whole screen is off. You didn't have individual pixels that could be turned on at will.
That is neat.
And so with the phones being being made into by third parties, so it is and isn't. It's a very interesting system the way phones work. Google originally had its line, which used to be called the Nexus line. It had third-party contractors make them. So I believe like the first Nexus was Motorola, and then eventually HTC. They contracted out, and then Google eventually bought HTC, and now it acquired all the assets and now is making pixels themselves. Apple has always built their own phone themselves, but it's still getting its parts from other places. So I think the newest iPhone, the iPhone 10, and it has a Samsung processor and a Samsung screen in there, and which has caused problems in the past because Apple has used Samsung parts in a lot of their phones, almost all of them, and there was like lawsuits involved, thinking that Samsung was using the parts that they contracted for Apple as part of their own parts or designs and stuff like that, because Samsung has their own line of the Galaxies.
Which, okay, so I've only had a handful of smartphones. I had it was a Galaxy?
Yeah.
Galaxy
the Galaxy
3
S5
and the Galaxy S5.
Yeah.
And I liked both of those quite a bit. I do really like my Pixel though, the Pixel 2 right now with the fingerprint sensor. That's really handy, and to like log into my bank account and everything with that's super convenient. Also, the cameras are really nice. So I'm excited that the Pixel 3's camera is supposed to be even better.
Yeah, we have Pixel 3s on the way.
And so, okay, this is something that's also interesting to me, is your I don't know if predictions is the right word, but the shift toward the future that a lot of technology like our phones are making. I didn't like the wireless headphones at first, but that's happened to the Pixel. And has it happened to other major phones?
iPhone was the first one to first notable one to get rid of the headphone jack. And then Samsung or Pixel followed suit shortly after. Samsung still has not done it, and they're using it as a selling point, but eventually they're going to get away with it.
Yeah, at first I didn't like it, but now that I do have a good pair of the wireless headphones that go over the ears and a pair that go in the ears, now I'm a little more accepting.
Yeah, Bluetooth, I think it's still a little early for what they're trying to do, is pushing this wireless headphones. Bluetooth or USB-C headphones, because USB-C headphones almost are non-existent. You can't find them.
But wait, so the Pixel 2 with the USB-C charge port, if there were headphones that had instead of a headphone jack, they're making...
Yeah, there's USB-C headphones.
I want more of those. They need to make those, because
yeah,
I'm accepting it, but I wouldn't mind being able to plug it in. But then what if they end up taking away all of our ports because they want it to be like a closed thing?
That's very near in the future, I bet.
And they would do wireless charging too, huh?
Yeah.
That's with the Pixel 3.
Pixel 3 now has a glass back. A lot of phones are now going to the glass back for wireless charging.
Oh, I was going to ask.
They used to have metal backs.
So the glass, I thought the glass back had to do something with reception or
It
signal.
does, yeah. So what you saw was the trend was that over past 10 years or so, even 5 years, a lot of phones were plastic originally, but that was ended up feeling cheap once phones started getting metal rims and metal
turning
things
into
like
computers.
that. Yeah, the plastic started to feel like a cheap phone.
Yeah.
And it was less durable. So then you started getting metal phones, like metal bodies, even unibody metal phones.
What is unibody?
All just one body.
So you
that's
can't
all
open it
giant
to take
metal.
the battery out.
You would well, yeah, that was also another trend. But that was more of slimming down the phone. So people wanted thinner and thinner phones. So in order to do that, they would slim down the battery, and even the connection to the battery had to get slimmed down. So as that got down, they had to make it so that they were no longer just reusable or interchangeable. They were just
part of it, closed inside.
And so unibody phones, just like one giant metal back, started becoming very popular. And then and they continued that way for a while, but then eventually they noticed that like the reception was not as good in a metal phone, so you started seeing phones come out with like mostly metal, but it have like a glass top or glass around the camera or things like that, so that they could get in some signal. And even still, now that the wireless is coming, the wireless charging doesn't work through metal, so they needed to change it to glass. And glass kind of now is a premium. It has a premium feel to it. It's durable, and
now we put plastic cases over that.
Yeah, and allows for
we come full circle.
You to do the charging. So eventually they'll get to charging. But back to the headphones. So wireless headphones, it's a little early, I think, that they started doing this, but it's here now. There's no changing that. But what's helping is the fact that Bluetooth is getting better. So I think now with the new Bluetooth 5.1, you can have multiple headphones, or you can have multiple Bluetooth devices connected at the same time, which is very useful, so that you could have, if you're using multiple Bluetooth devices, such as headphones and maybe a Bluetooth accessory,
a mouse or a keyboard,
or let's say if you're
not if you're a gamer, right?
Yeah, let's say you were like right now, a popular accessory is the Square Reader.
Okay.
If you are like a technician that's out on the field and they need to take a payment, they'll have a Square Reader with them, which is a Bluetooth reader. And but if you have headphones, you have to switch between the Bluetooth reader and the headphones on the phone, because only one device can be paired at a time. As the adoption of the Bluetooth 5.1 rolls out, you'll have less of those problems. You could have multiple things connected at the same time, allowing you to connect.
So this is probably going to sound dumb. I didn't even realize there were different versions of Bluetooth.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Everything like Bluetooth is getting updated all the time, just like anything else. So yeah,
part of the software updates.
Yeah, just like USB is being updated all the time.
Is it?
Yeah, like USB-C is only the past year been very popular, but it's actually been out for a while.
Is the software for USB how it transfers information or something changing, or is that like
I'm sure that
Bluetooth
is,
more
but
what you're
like,
talking?
No, the USB right now, a lot of the USB is the physical aspects, but yeah, there's software aspects that also are firmware aspects that are also being updated. But right now, USB-C is technically USB 3.1.
Okay, so hardware are the physical pieces, the matter.
Mm-hmm.
Software is the program, the code, the stuff that executes stuff. What
Mhm.
is firmware?
Firmware is the hard coded. It's essentially the uh, telling the wiring what to do, if there's a layman's term for it. So let's say, so if you have a processor on a phone, that processor is hardware. It's physical hardware, but that processor doesn't know what to do until you give it firmware that tells it what to do.
Okay.
So it's hardwired into the processor
So
that can't change via software or anything like that.
it's sort of like a body would be hardware, and then your body's like the DNA inside the cells of your body that tell all the different things to do what they need to do. That's the firmware,
Mhm.
and then software is like what you choose, the applications,
Yeah,
the
if you would think of your brain as the operating system that's running the software, and
okay,
then your
yeah.
cells being the firmware to the rest of your body,
Okay. Okay.
or the DNA being the firmware to the cells.
Okay.
However deep you want to go into it.
That makes more sense. I just wasn't sure what firmware was, but now I've forgotten. Bluetooth, yes. You
Yeah,
said that Bluetooth was getting updated when? I guess that just comes with when your phone.
yeah.
My phone and my computer, especially, my computer is always sending these little boxes that say, "Aren't you, are you gonna update me?"
Hmm.
And I don't know when to or why to sometimes, and I just want to put it off, and so I keep saying like, "Ask me later," and that goes on for months, and I don't know.
So updating your device is important because a lot of times it comes with security updates,
Mm.
and it will update your phone's cache of like Google and Microsoft and Apple. They're all the time finding all of the latest viruses and potential threats to your computer. And so this antivirus on your phone and on your computer and things like that, they don't know what to look for until they're told what to look for. And your updates, when they say it's a security update, it's essentially telling your phone all the new things that it's found. It's like the
The
wanted list.
antibodies.
Yeah, it's like a wanted list of
Okay, it's like these.
potential
Yep.
threats. And so oftentimes security updates have that thing. Then just general updates that might have more like efficient processing, like especially if you own a graphics card, you'll know that your graphics card constantly has updates all the time to
I think I own a graphics card and I don't know this. I don't know that ownership is prerequisite to being able to run this technology. Don't make such assumptions. What are you talking about? What do you mean I need updates for my graphics card? Like,
so the graphics card is the easiest one because it's the most obvious. But
okay.
like just like your phone, computer
You'll notice if the
processor,
graphics card's not working. Okay, yeah.
just like
That's
your computer processor is like it has updates to make it more efficient and things like that. Those oftentimes comes in updates and Windows updates and things, or Mac updates. But the graphics card is the most obvious because games that come out won't run efficiently on a newer your graphics card until you update them so that they're optimized for that game, so that graphics card knows the game itself and understands the settings to it and things like that. So oftentimes the game companies will give the game to the graphics card people months ahead of time so that they can look at the game, they can see how it runs on their systems, and they can optimize the graphics card appropriately for the game to run on them. And then they ship out that update when the game is released or before the game's released so that the cards will run the game properly.
and so is that mostly like big games that have that kind of influence?
Generally, big games do are the ones that do hit, but there's almost big game that comes out every second Thursday. So
Like the highly anticipated ones are
Yeah.
from big companies, I guess.
big companies, yeah, usually the highly anticipated.
Okay, so for a gamer, of course, a graphics card is pretty paramount, and the speed,
Mhm.
the RAM,
Uh,
rapid access memory. So is that the thing that you use a lot of in game, or what?
the graphics card and the RAM are both used. The RAM less so. Like it helps. It certainly helps. But actually, it depends on how well the game's coded. If a game's coded properly, there a lot. The CPU, the central processing unit, should be able to get help from the graphics card and the RAM modules that you have to make it be able to do everything it needs to properly. A lot of problems. There are problems with common bugs are what is a memory leak, where what will happen is for some reason the game code will constantly stack memory on the RAM to the point where eventually the RAM will slow down because it's getting all this kind of junk that it's not releasing, and eventually what's supposed to only take up 2 GB of RAM for the computer is taking up 4 GB of RAM. And especially if you have like an 8 GB RAM computer, you're overloading your computer because it's already using the other 4 GB of RAM for the operating system itself. So it's using all 8 gigs of RAM when it's only supposed to be using 6. That's
So many more questions.
So that's what a memory, like that's essentially what a memory leak is doing. Is it's not offloading memory
Okay.
properly like it should, and it's just building up and building up. Processor, like if it's not coded properly for a processor, a processor has individual cores. What is it called? And then even then each core has threads. And essentially what a game is supposed to do for the processor is tell it to separate all the data that it's getting to the different threads to ease up the load, instead of having one thread run the entire game, separate it out to make it even it out to make it easier on the processor. But if it's not coded correctly and it's only using one thread or one core of the processor, then it ends up taxing that thing and not using it efficiently.
Okay, so assuming games are made well enough,
Yeah.
Graphics, the CPU and the RAM, like those to all be fast and efficient for a smooth running. For someone that is more into researching, reading, writing, just like using basic word processors, the internet, or reading from books, things that way. Do you really need to focus on anything, or what would you?
Generally, you would just want your RAM to be the biggest. Like you want your processor to be good enough to run the computer at a level that you like it.
So, like, if you have, say, 12 or 30 tabs open in your browser, having a processor is what would make sure that those are all still going.
If you have 12 or 30 tabs, you would want RAM, because RAM is the one that's going to affect that. The processor itself, if you have a decent processor that'll run the system well enough, I kind of have like a bare minimum of an i5. You could Intel or whatever equivalent is. The like that generally will run a computer fine. And then if you are using lots of tabs, you'll want more RAM stacked up.
And then and then the other main thing that I can think of, besides like gaming or reading, writing, artists, people who are creating. I guess it would vary depending on what you're creating. The visual artists who are using like Photoshop and those, they tend to, seems like, gravitate more to Apple. Yeah. Is that true for like photos and video as well then?
Yeah, most of the time. and it's quite kind of interesting because Apple doesn't have the greatest hardware for that, but they have some great software. And
This,
at a
yeah,
time,
their
at one point in
software.
time, because their operating system was pretty efficient, it was a better computer than a Windows computer with the same specs. But nowadays, a Windows computer with the same specs versus an Apple computer with the same specs runs about the same.
The
But
software?
yeah, the software runs about the same. The
And this,
there have been certain things where uh, the software that they use, like uh, what is it? I There was like a video software that Apple, I can't remember what it was. I think it's Final Cut. That's an Apple video software. Even that software specifically can render better than a Windows computer. Renders super fast, and that's just must be the efficiency of building on Mac for the whole time it understands Mac. That's what I'm assuming. But for the most part, you can get a more powerful system building a separate, because right now one of the big problems with Mac is once you buy a Mac, like that's it. You can't upgrade it. You can't really change
yeah,
it. There's no um
yeah,
and what is it? And then
it's not
you're
flexible.
limited to whatever Mac they build or they come out with next year. But what is it? This year's or last winter, I think, was the first iMac that's come out in a
What,
while, a
what
few
is an
years.
iMac?
iMac is their giant like
Oh,
computer,
that's
all-in-one
mostly
computer.
screen. It's like
Yeah,
a slightly thicker screen
yeah,
than
and I
most
think
flat
that was the
screens
first one
nowadays.
that's come out in a few years. So
But I see what you mean.
so
You can't really upgrade it because
yeah,
everything's made to fit like a puzzle in that
there was a
thing.
lot of video editors that had to resort to using the MacBook Pros because those were actually more powerful machines than the MacBook that they had, which was is taking over their desktop. Um, and then they also had the problem of what is it? The only modular one that they came out with was like 10 years ago, and nowadays they literally call it a garbage can because it looks like a garbage can. And now I guess there's a new one. There's a new modular one coming out this year, Mac. So we'll see how that works.
Back to the software question.
Yeah.
There's more that I have to ask there. You said now the Apple to Android. Is it called Android if it's a computer? Is Android's more like the mobile operating system?
Apple versus Google would be the direct comparisons between the company.
Okay, so
Um,
on I guess then Google devices like I'm talking more would it be Windows computers? Like PCs, personal computers versus Apple computers, right?
okay.
Personal computers is general term.
Personal computers would just are generally you're talking about Windows,
Okay. Any
PCs.
like laptop from whatever
Yeah,
third party Google,
you're.
whatever. Okay. So the software that's available for those
Mhm.
is pretty comparable to the Apple software that's
Yeah,
available. And it's different like apps versus programs a little bit. And you were saying like the Final Cut, some of the software isn't
yeah.
quite equitable, but
There,
most of it is.
most of it is because like most of the time, especially if you're using these software, there's a version of it that is probably exclusive to Apple. There's a version of it that's probably exclusive to Windows, and then
Because
there's
it's written
probably
different? Why is it like
yeah, it's
the
because
coding
you would need
behind it?
yeah you would need a whole separate code to run on Apple versus Windows because Apple is a Linux platform while Windows is a DOS system. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, it's coded differently, but some companies build for both, right? So Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Premiere Pro, it has an Apple version and a Windows version, and those and like it works just fine on both of them. And between Adobe Premiere Pro and Final Cut, one may be more efficient than the other in certain areas, but it's really at that point like what you prefer, what you like to do, which system that you like better, because there's just minute differences in how the software works, and whichever one you get used to, you end up just staying with.
Yeah. Been about almost an hour, just shy of, maybe. That might be. I have no idea. Is it recording even?
Yeah, it's.
Are
I just don't know.
you sure? How can you tell?
This
Are you sure that's not where you push to record?
is where
Okay.
but it doesn't actually say how long. Anyways, we could wrap it up there, and to ask any more questions, we can write them down so that
I can remember next week.
next week.
But yeah, that was a little bit helpful tonight. Because I've always got questions, and there's always new things coming up that I'm trying to figure out why it's working or why it's not.
Yeah, and we'll go. We'll have certain weeks that we're week topics based off of specific aspects of the tech world, and then especially if important or interesting news comes up, we can have a topic about that and stuff like that too. But hopefully everybody enjoyed this, and we will be back next week.
Right, sounds good.